Listen to me now, because this moment is not accidental. This sound reaching your ears is not random. And the stirring you feel rising in your spirit is not imagination. God is speaking, and the first words you must hear are these. You were tested. You were weighed. You were pressed beyond comfort, beyond strength, beyond understanding. And God said you passed the final trial. Not almost, not barely, not by chance. You passed. And the reason decoration shakes your soul is because deep inside you know what it cost to stand where you are standing now. You know the nights you cried without witnesses, the days you smiled while bleeding inside, the seasons when silence was your only companion and hope felt like a foreign language. This is not a message for spectators. This is a summons for survivors, for those who walk through fire without applause and still refuse to bow their faith. There are trials that announce themselves loudly, but the most dangerous tests are the quiet ones, the ones that slowly drain your strength, the ones that question your identity, the ones that whisper lies instead of shouting threats. God watched you when no one else saw you. God measured your obedience when it cost you everything. God examined your heart when bitterness tried to take root, when resentment knocked at your door, when despair offered you a permanent residence. And even when you stumbled, even when you doubted, even when you cried out with questions instead of praises, God did not disqualify you. God was not looking for perfection. God was looking for persistence. God was not seeking flawless performance. God was seeking unbroken faith. You must understand this truth deeply, because the enemy of your destiny wants you to believe that your suffering disqualified you, that your wounds credited you, that your delay denied you. But God declares that the very trial you thought would destroy you became the evidence that you were ready for promotion. You are not being punished. You are being abandoned. You are being advanced. You were not forgotten. You are being fortified. God does not test those he plans to discard. God tests those he plans to entrust. And when God says you pass the final trial, it means the season of hidden endurance has ended and the season of visible fulfillment is now opening before you. There is a spiritual law that governs destiny. What you survive with faith becomes the foundation of what you will steward with authority. That is why the trial was intense. That is why the pressure was relentless. That is why the delay felt cruel. You were being shaped for weight, not appearance. God was enlarging your capacity so you could carry blessing without breaking, influence without arrogance, favor without compromise. Many desire elevation, but few can endure the process that makes elevation safe. God did not rush you because God refused to ruin you. God waited until your character could stand where your calling was headed. Remember the moments when you wanted answers and received silence instead. Remember when you prayed and nothing changed outwardly, yet something was shifting inwardly. That was not absence. That was alignment. God was teaching you to trust his word over your feelings, his promises over your perceptions. Faith that depends on visible evidence collapses when evidence disappears. But faith anchored in God's nature stands firm even when the ground shakes. You learn to walk without seeing the full path. You learn to obey without knowing the outcome. You learn to worship without immediate reward. These are not small lessons. These are kingdom credentials. God tested your loyalty when opportunities to compromise appeared attractive and reasonable. God tested your humility when recognition was delayed and others were celebrated. God tested your forgiveness when you were misunderstood, misrepresented, and mistreated. And in those moments, heaven was not silent. heaven was recorded. Every tear you wiped away in secret was counted. Every time you chose integrity over convenience, it was marked. Every time you restrained your tongue instead of releasing bitterness, it was weighed. You may have felt unseen, but you were never unaccounted for. God does not forget faithfulness, and God does not overlook obedience. There comes a moment in every life of destiny when the testing shifts from endurance to release. You are standing at that threshold. Now, the announcement that you passed the final trial is not merely comfort. It is commissioning. It means the resistance that once blocked you can no longer hold you. It means the doors that refuse to open must now respond to divine authority. It means the limitations that once defined you are being rewritten. When God declares a season finished, no force in the visible or invisible realm can extend it. What God closes remains closed. What God opens remains open. Do not misunderstand this moment. Passing the final trial does not mean the absence of challenges. It means the end of preparation. It means you no longer face battles to prove your faith, but battles to express it. The nature of your opposition changes because the nature of your assignment has changed. You are no longer fighting to survive. You are now positioned to advance. You are no longer striving to be refined. You are now released to be effective. God does not bring you this far to leave you empty-handed. God does not invest this deeply to abandon the harvest. Look back for a moment, not to relive the pain, but to recognize the transformation. You are not who you were when the trial began. Your discernment is sharper. Your compassion is deeper. Your courage is stronger. Your dependence on God is purer. What once shook you no longer controls you. What once intimidated you no longer defines you. That is evidence. That is growth. That is victory. And God is saying you've been found faithful. Many people ask why the trial had to last so long. The answer is not found in time, but in trust. God was not measuring days. God was measuring surrender. The moment you fully entrusted your outcome to God, the trial lost its authority over you. The moment you stopped trying to control the process and allowed God to shape you, the chains began to loosen. God does not delay out of cruelty. God delays out of wisdom. God sees what you cannot see. And God knows what you are not yet ready to know. There is a sacred exchange that happens in trials. God takes your weakness and gives you strength. God takes your confusion and gives you clarity. God takes your tears and turns them into testimonies. But this exchange only happens when you remain in the process. Many quit at the edge of breakthrough because pain convinces them that progress has stopped. But pain is often proof that transformation is all his ring. You stay. You endure. You trusted. And now God speaks the verdict. You passed. This declaration also means that what comes next will require a new mindset. You cannot carry the mentality of survival into a season of abundance. You cannot think like a victim when God is calling you to walk in authority. The trial trained you to depend, but the next season will require you to lead, to influence, to steward what God releases. You must let go of the fear that was necessary for survival, but is no longer needed for growth. God is not elevating you to repeat the past. God is not elevating you to redefine the future. Understand this clearly. God's approval is not earned by performance, but revealed through obedience. You did not pass because you were flawless. You passed because you were faithful. You kept your heart open when it would have been easier to close it. You kept believing when doubt surrounded you. You kept moving when rest looked more appealing than obedience. That faith moved heaven. That obedience shifted seasons. There are blessings prepared for you that could not be released earlier because they would have overwhelmed you. There are responsibilities assigned to you that required maturity, forged only through pressure. God was protecting both you and the promise. And now the protection has shifted into permission. Permission to step forward. Permission to speak boldly. Permission to receive without guilt. Permission to walk in what was once only dreamed about. Do not rush this revelation. Let it settle into your spirit. God is not testing you anymore in that area. The cycle is complete. The lesson is learned. The requirement is fulfilled. And because God is faithful, because God is true, the reward must follow. Heaven does not demand without providing. Heaven does not test without releasing. Heaven does not prepare without purpose. Some will look at your life and not understand how you arrived here. They did not see the hidden battles. They did not feel the weight you carried. They did not hear the prayers you whispered when words were all you had left. And that is fine. Validation does not come from people. Validation comes from God. And when God speaks approval, no criticism can silence it. This is a time to stand upright, not in pride, but in confidence. Confidence that God has done a work in you that cannot be undone. Confidence that the foundation laid through suffering will sustain future success. Confidence that the same God who carried you through the valley will walk with you on the mountain. God does not change with circumstances. God remains constant, faithful, sovereign. The final trial often attacks identity more than circumstances. It tries to convince you that you are alone, that you are forgotten, that your obedience is meaningless. But now you see the truth. You were never alone. You were never forgotten. Your obedience was shaping eternity. And now the season shifts. Guard your heart in his moment. Do not minimize what God has done. Do not downplay the victory. Humility does not mean denial. Humility means recognition that it was God who sustained you, God who strengthened you, God who brought you through. Acknowledge the work. Honor the process. Step forward with gratitude and readiness. What lies ahead will require the same faith that carried you through the trial. But now that faith will be exercised from a place of assurance, not desperation. You will move with clarity instead of confusion. You will speak with authority instead of hesitation. You will act with boldness instead of fear. Not because you are strong, but because you know God is faithful. The declaration stands firm, unchanging, irreversible. You pass the final trial. Let that truth anchor you when new responsibilities arise. Let it remind you when challenges appear that you are not untested, not unprepared, not unqualified. You have been proven. You have been refined. You have been approved. And as you step into what God has prepared, do not forget the lessons carved into your soul during the waiting. Do not forget the dependence that sustained you. Do not forget the compassion born from suffering. These will keep you grounded as you rise. God does not elevate to isolate. God elevates to impact. There is a divine momentum being released now. A forward movement that cannot be reversed. Walk with it, trust it, align with it. The voice that carried you through the storm is the same voice, GU, guiding you into fulfillment. And that voice continues to speak, continues to lead, continues to affirm, saying, you are ready. You are chosen. You are approved. And what is coming will require everything you became in the fire, everything you learned in the waiting, everything you surrendered in faith. Because the journey does not end here. It unfolds into what was promised, what was prepared, what was preserved for the one who endured, the one who believed, the one who remained. Living would have been easier. The one who trusted God when understanding failed, The one who now stands at the edge of release, hearing the words that change everything, knowing the season has turned, knowing the verdict has been spoken, knowing the hand of God is moving you forward into the fullness of what was always meant for you, into the unfolding purpose that demanded patience, demanded obedience, demanded faith, and now demands readiness. Because what God begins to release next will require you to walk, to speak, to act, and to live from the certainty that the test is complete. The approval is given. The path is opening. And the story is still being written as you move forward into what God has already declared over your life. Carrying the weight of destiny with the strength that was forged in silence, the wisdom that was born in suffering, the faith that was proven in the dark, and the assurance that the voice guiding you now is the same voice that sustained you then, calling you on war deeper, higher into the unfolding will of God, where every step from this moment on is shaped by the truth that you did not endure in vain. You did not suffer without purpose. You did not wait without reason. Because now the ground beneath your feet is changing. The atmosphere around you is shifting. And the future ahead of you is responding to the declaration that has already been spoken, that has already been sealed, that has already been released in the realm that governs all things. As you continue forward, aware, aligned, surrendered, and ready to carry what God has entrusted to you, knowing that what was once a trial has now become a testimony, still unfolding, still expanding, still moving as you the next unfolding moment of purpose that does not conclude, does not settle, does not end, but continues to open, to reveal, to call you further in the path prepared for you by God, who remains faithful, sovereign, and present and at work in every step you are about to take as you move forward into what has been waiting for you beyond the fire, beyond the waiting, beyond the farther trial where God has already spoken and continues to speak as you walk onward into what is next. Carrying you the shable certainty that the season has turned and the journey continues into what God has prepared for those who endure. Believe and trust Him with everything they are and everything they will become as they move forward now without fear, without hesitation, without looking back. Anchored to the truth that the declaration stands. The verdict is final and the path ahead is opening even now as you step into it with faith that remains alive, active, and ready to not respond to every moment still unfolding before you in the presence and purpose of God, who continues to lead you onward into what has not yet been fully revealed, but is already set in motion as you move forward into it without needing to look back. Because the voice that brought you through continues to guide you into what comes next and beyond as the journey continues without pause, without closure, without an ending. Because what God has begun continues to unfold into more than can be contained as you keep walking forward into the purpose that does not stop here and does not conclude, but continues to expand as you move into it now without turning back, without finality, without an ending. Now, hear this with clarity, because what God does after the final trial is often more demanding than the trial itself. Survival trains your endurance, but release will require your discernment. In the wilderness, you learned how to wait. In the open field, you must learn how to move. God does not promote people to rest. God promotes people to responsibility. What is coming will stretch you in a different way. No longer will pressure come only from opposition. It will come from opportunity. And many fail not because of hardship, but because they are unprepared to manage favor. God tested you, you would not be corrupted by abundance. God tested you in obscurity, so you would not be intoxicated by visibility. There is a sacred fear that must now rise in you, not fear of failure, but reverence for assignment. When God entrusts you with more, every choice begins to matter at a higher level. Every word carries greater weight. Every decision ripples farther than before. This is why the trial purified your motives. God was stripping you of the need for approval, the hunger for applause, the addiction to validation. What comes next will demand that you move even when misunderstood, stand firm even when celebrated, and remain humble even when elevated. God does not lift people to replace him. God lifts people to represent him. Understand that passing the final trial does not mean you will always feel strong. It means you now know where your strength truly comes from. You will still face moments of uncertainty, but they will no longer dominate you. You will still encounter resistance, but it will no longer define you. The difference is not the absence of storms, but the presence of authority within them. Authority is not loud confidence. Authority is quiet certainty rooted in knowing God is with you, ahead of you, and within the purpose unfolding through you. There are doors that will open suddenly now, not because circumstances changed, but because you changed. God waited until your internal alignment matched your external calling. When character catches up to destiny, ex-liberation begins. What once required struggle will now respond to obedience. What once resisted will now cooperate. This does not mean ease. It means alignment. It means the friction that once drained you will now refine you further, but without breaking you. Be aware of this. After the final trial, temptation often returns in subtler forms, no longer blatant, no longer destructive on the surface, but appealing, reasonable, justified. You must remain watchful. Passing the test does not grant immunity. It grants awareness. God expects maturity now. You are no longer reacting. You are discerning. You are no longer surviving. You are stewarding. Every gift released will require wisdom to manage it, patience to grow it, and humility to protect it. God is not only interested in what you receive, but in what you reproduce. Blessing is never meant to terminate with you. Influence is not given for self-display, but for impact. God measures success differently than the world does. The world counts numbers. God weighs obedience. The world rewards speed. God honors faithfulness. The world celebrates visibility. God treasures alignment. You pass the trial because you chose God's way over shortcuts, God's timing over impatience, God's truth over convenience. Now the call is deeper. You are invited into partnership, into cooperation with divine purpose. God does not force destiny. God invites participation. The next phase will require intentional obedience. You will need to listen more carefully, move more deliberately, and remain more surrendered than ever before. The cost increases because the calling increases, but so does the grace. God never demands without supplying what is necessary to fulfill it. Let go of the identity forged solely in pain. That season shaped you, but it is not your final definition. You are not merely one who endured. You are one who is entrusted. You are not marked only by what you survived. You are marked by what you now carry. Carry it well. Carry it with reverence. Carry it with gratitude. Carry it knowing that a thing entrusted to you passed through the hands of God before it reached yours. There will be moments ahead when nostalgia for simpler seasons tries to pull you backward. Do not mistake simplicity for significance. God moves you forward for a reason. The past taught you the future will use you. Honor where you came from, but do not camp there. Movement is obedience now. Growth is worship now. The expansion is not arrogance when God initiates it. It is alignment. You will notice that some relationships change in this season. This is not betrayal. It is transition. Not everyone who walks with you through testing is assigned to walk with you in fulfillment. God rearranges environments to protect purpose. Release without resentment. Bless without attachment. Trust that God removes what cannot go where you are going. Loneliness may visit briefly, but it will not stay. God always provides the right connections for the R. I seasons speak differently. Now words shape atmosphere. You have authority to declare life, to speak clarity, to dismantle fear. Do not underestimate the power God has placed in your voice. What you say aligns with what you believe. And what you believe directs how you move. Speak from faith, not memory. Speak from promise, not pain. Speak as one who has passed through fire and emerged refined. Remember this deeply. God is not surprised by your future. Every swoop ahead has already been accounted for. The same God who sustained you when you had nothing will guide you when you have much. The same God who comforted you in silence will counsel you in abundance. Nothing ahead will catch God unprepared. And nothing ahead requires you to become someone else to survive it. You are already equipped, already shaped, already approved. What unfolds next will reveal layers of purpose you could not see before. Vision expands as obedience continues. Do not demand full clarity before moving. Clarity follows movement. God rarely reveals the entire path at once because faith grows by walking, not by seeing. Trust the step in front of you. That is how the trial taught you to live. And that is how destiny continues to unfold. The final trial was not the end of refinement. It was the end of qualification. You are no longer being tested to see if you can be trusted. You are being trusted because you were tested. That distinction changes everything. Walk accordingly. Like accordingly. The seed eat accordingly. There is a way to this season, but it is not burdensome. It is meaningful. And as you move forward, keep your spirit sensitive. Celebrate without losing reverence. Build without forgetting dependence. Advance without abandoning intimacy with God. Success that distances you from God is not success at all, but success that deepens reliance, sharpens obedience, and expands impact becomes an offering that pleases God. This moment is not about arrival. It is about activation. You are stepping into motion, into flow, into cooperation with what God has been preparing quietly, patiently, intentionally. The silence has done its work. The waiting has completed its task. The fire has refined what needed refining. Now the ground responds differently beneath your feet. Now resistance shifts into momentum. Now faith operates with confidence born from experience. And even now, as you stand on this threshold, God continues to speak not loudly, not hurriedly, but with the same steady authority that carried you through the trial, guiding you into responsibility, into stewardship, into purpose that unfolds layer by layer as you walk, as you listen, as you obey. Knowing that what lies ahead will demand presence, courage, humility, and a faith that remains alive. Not because the trial is over, but because God is still leading you forward into what has been prepared, what has been preserved, what has been waiting beyond the test, beyond the fire, beyond the moment where you could not endure anymore. Now unfolding as you move without hesitation, without retreat, without needing to look back, carrying you the awareness that the season has shifted. The responsibility has increased and the path continues to open as you keep walking into it with a heart aligned, a spirit alert, and a trust that remains anchored in God as the journey moves forward into what is next and beyond. As purpose continues to reveal itself in real time, will you remain attentive, surrendered, and ready for what unfolds next. As you continue moving into it, guided by God who remains faithful and present as the unfolding does not pause, does not settle, does not conclude, but continues to open, you walk into the next unfolding moment of purpose that is still in motion as you move forward now into it without pause, without closure, without finality. As God continues to lead and you continue to follow into what is still being revealed as you walk forward into the unfolding path that remains open before you as you move onward into it now. Now allow this truth to settle even deeper after the final trial. God begins to speak less to correct and more to direct. In earlier seasons, instruction came through discipline, through restraint, through closed doors and delayed answers. But now guidance comes through alignment, through inward conviction, through a quiet but firm knowing that settles in your spirit. This is the reward of endurance. God trusts you with clarity. Because why? Learn to obey even without it. When you moved before understanding, heaven took note. When you trusted God's nature more than your circumstances, you were being trained for this level of guidance. There is a difference between being led and being driven. Trials often drive us. Purpose must lead us. In the pressure, you move because you had no other choice but to lean on God. Now you move because you recognize God's voice and direction. That distinction matters. God is not pushing you forward by force. God is drawing you forward by purpose. The pull you feel is not anxiety. It is assignment. It is not restlessness. It is readiness. Something in you knows that standing still would now be disobedience. This season will require restraint as much as boldness. Not every opportunity is an assignment. Not every open door is yours to walk through. Discernment is the guardian of destiny. God does not rush. God orders steps. The trial trains you to wait without resentment. Now, you must learn to move without recklessness. Wisdom is knowing when to act and when to remain still. And that wisdom grows only in those who stay attentive to God's guidance rather than their own ambition. Understand this carefully. God is not impressed by speed, but by accuracy. You do not need to prove anything anymore. You do not need to compete. You do not need to strive for recognition. The trial stripped you of the need to perform for validation. Now you move from identity, not insecurity. When you came now, who you are before God. You are no longer desperate for confirmation from people. There will be moments when progress feels slower than you expected. Do not panic. Momentum does not always feel dramatic. Sometimes it feels quiet, steady, almost ordinary. But do not confuse subtlety with stagnation. God often moves most powerfully beneath the surface. Roots grow before branches spread. Foundations deepen before structures rise. What God is establishing now is meant to last, not impress briefly and collapse later. The final trial taught you to recognize God's presence, even when emotions were absent. That lesson is invaluable now. Feelings fluctuate. Purpose does not. You will not always feel inspired, energized, or confident. But obedience is not sustained by emotion. It is sustained by conviction. Conviction remains even when excitement fades. God builds lives on conviction, not on enthusiasm. There is also a new kind of accountability that comes with this season. When you know better, you are expected to choose better. God holds you to a higher standard now, not to burden you, but to protect what has been entrusted to you. Standards are not restrictions, they are safeguards. Boundaries are not limitations, they are protections. The trial taught you the cost of misalignment. Now, wisdom helps you avoid unnecessary loss. Do not romanticize the past struggle, but do not forget its lessons. Pain was a teacher, not a home. God does not ask you to relive it, only to remember what it taught you. Gratitude keeps memory healthy. Gratitude reminds you that every step forward was made possible by God's sustaining power, not by your own strength alone. You may notice that your prayers are changing. They are becoming less about rescue and more about direction, less about relief and more about responsibility. This is growth. God is shifting you from asking to be carried to asking how to carry what He places in your hands. That is not distance. That is trust. God trusts you to walk with awareness, to listen with intention, to respond with obedience. Be careful not to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. Humility is not self-eraser. God did not invest this much to have you retreat into silence out of fear. Speak when God prompts you. Act when God directs you. Stillness and boldness must now coexist. Silence, when required, is wisdom. Courage, when required, is obedience. This season will also test your consistency. After trials, discipline can weaken because urgency fades. Guard against that. Maintain the habits that sustained you when things were hard. Consistency preserves alignment. What kept you lied in a wilderness will keep you grounded in abundance. Do not abandon the practices that anchored you just because the pressure has eased. God is attentive to your posture now. Not your appearance, not your achievements, but your heart. Pride can enter quietly, disguised as confidence. Fear can return subtly, disguised as caution. Stay honest before regard. Self-examination keeps the heart clear. God resists nothing more than pretense and honors nothing more than sincerity. There is a quiet authority forming in you, a steadiness that does not need to announce itself. This authority does not come from control, but from trust. People will feel it before they understand it. Environments will respond to it before words are spoken. This is not manipulation. This is alignment. When God's order settles in a person, chaos recognizes it. Remember, the final trial was never about breaking you. It was about revealing what was already forming within you. God knew what was there. The trial allowed you to see it too. Confidence rooted in experience is different from confidence built on assumption. You now know what it costs to remain faithful. You now know what it takes to endure. That knowledge becomes strength in future moments. You will face decisions that carry long-term impact. Do not rush them. Time spent seeking God is never wasted time. Silence is not absence. Often it is invitation. God speaks to those who listen. And listening requires patience. The trial trains you to wait without falling apart. Use that skill. Now, as you move forward, remember that fulfillment is not always loud. Some of the most significant moments will come quietly, without ceremony, without witnesses. Faithfulness in unseen places still matters. God still sees. God still records. God still honors. And even now, as the path continues to open, as responsibility increases, as purpose unfolds with greater clarity, the same presence that sustained you in the darkest moments remains with you, guiding, correcting, strengthening, inviting you to keep walking forward with awareness, humility, courage, and trust. Staying attentive to the voice that has never left you. Staying aligned with the will that continues to unfold before you. Moving steadily into what has been prepared, knowing that each step still matters. Each choice still counts, and each moment remains part of a greater unfolding that continues as you walk onward with God leading you into what is still ahead, still opening, still forming as you remain faithful in motion, attentive in spirit, and anchored in the certainty that the journey continues under the guidance of God, who remains present, faithful, and actively work as you move forward into the unfolding purpose without pause, without retreat, without conclusion, as the path remains open before you, and the unfolding continues as you walk into it now. Let this settle into the deepest place within you. After the final trial, God begins to shape legacy, not just outcomes. Trials refine the individual, but release positions the individual to affect others. What you endured was never meant to stop with you. God was forming a vessel that could carry wisdom without arrogance, authority without cruelty, compassion without weakness. The depth of what you suffered corresponds to the reach of what you are now meant to influence. God does not waste pain. God converts an insight into guidance for those who will cross your path. There is a gravity to this season that you must honor. Lightness of spirit does not mean carelessness of soul. You are now entrusted with moments that will shape futures, conversations that will redirect lives, decisions that will ripple beyond your own story. This is why God slowed you down before speeding you up. Haste produces error. Alignment produces impact. God is deliberate, and now your steps reflect that same deliberateness. Understand that the final trial also exposed false dependencies. You learned what could not sustain you. You learned what failed under pressure. You learned what collapsed when certainty disappeared. And in that stripping, God became not just your refuge, but your reference point. You no longer measure success by comfort alone, but by obedience. You no longer measure peace by absence of conflict, but by alignment with God's will. That shift is maturity. Do not expect constant affirmation in this season. God will not always reassure you the way He did when you were fragile. Silence now is not neglect. It is confidence. God is not watching anxiously to see if you will fail. God is observing faithfully as you walk out what has already been established within you. Trust what has been formed. Trust the discernment sharpened in waiting. Trust the restraint learned in pressure. There is also a call now to guard your inner life fiercely. Public expansion without private grounding leads to collapse. God values what happens in unseen places more than what happens before people. The integrity of your thoughts, the diswhirl of your attention, the humility of your self-awareness. These matter now more than ever. Great assignments are sustained by quiet devotion, not public display. You may find that your tolerance for disorder has decreased. Chaos that once felt normal now feels unbearable. This is not impatience. It is alignment. God has recalibrated your spirit to recognize what does not belong. Do not ignore that sensitivity. It is a gift. It will protect you from environments, patterns, and relationships that would drain what God is building. At the same time, resist the temptation to become rigid. Strength without compassion hardens the heart. God reminds you not to isolate you, but to position you as a stabilizing presence. Others will still be struggling in the places you have already passed through. Your role is not to judge them, but to demonstrate what endurance produces. Your life becomes a living testimony, not through words alone, but through consistency, humility, and faithfulness. The final trial also clarified your priorities. What once seemed urgent now feels trivial. What once felt essential now feels optional. This is wisdom settling in. Guard it. Do not allow noise to reclaim space that clarity has earned. God will not shout over distractions. God speaks to those who protect. Stillness. Stillness is not inactivity, it is attentiveness. You will encounter moments when fear attempts to return. Not as panic, but as subtle hesitation. Do not mistake caution for wisdom automatically. Wisdom considers, fear retreats. Ask yourself whether resistance is coming from discernment or from the memory of past pain God brought you through so that fear would no longer be your decision maker. Courage now is not reckless. It is informed by experience and anchored in trust. Remember that obedience does not always feel heroic. Often it feels ordinary, repetitive, uncelebrated. But faithfulness in ordinary moments builds extraordinary outcomes over time. God watches patterns, not performances. One obedience step taken consistently outweighs dramatic gestures made sporadically. As responsibility increases, so does the need for self-awareness. Know your limits. Know your tendency, pause, and when to proceed. God does not demand exhaustion as proof of commitment. Burnout is not sacrifice. It is imbalance. Rest is not retreat. It is stewardship. The trial taught you endurance, but the next season requires sustainability. There will be moments when weight of expectation presses in from others and from yourself. Release what God did not place on you. You are accountable to God, not to projections. You are responsible for obedience, not for outcomes beyond your control. God remains sovereign. Trust does not diminish after the trial. It deepens. As you move forward, keep gratitude active. Gratitude keeps the heart soft. It prevents entitlement. It reminds you that everything you carry passes first through the hands of God. Gratitude does not ignore progress. It acknowledges the source of progress. This season will reveal that strength and gentleness are not opposites. Authority and humility can coexist. Confidence and dependence can walk together. God is teaching you integration, not imbalance. Wholeness is the goal, not mere success. And even now, as the path continues to unfold, as new challenges present themselves in unfamiliar forms, the same God who declared that you passed the final trial continues to walk with you, guiding each step, shaping each decision, inviting you to remain attentive, surrendered, and courageous, moving forward with a faith that has been tested and proven, a trust that has been refined by fire, and a readiness that comes not from ambition, but from alignment. As you continue into what remains ahead, aware that the journey is still unfolding, the purpose still revealing itself, and the presence of God remains constant as you walk onward into what is next without needing closure, without finality, without an ending continues as the unfolding continues, as long as you remain responsive, faithful, and willing to follow where God leads you next. Let this further awaken you. After the final trial, God begins to refine your sight. Not the sight of the eyes, but the sight of the heart. You start to receive patterns instead of events, motives instead of appearances, trajectories instead of moments. This is discernment born from suffering. Pain stripped away illusions, and clarity took their place. You no longer chase noise. You recognize substance. You no longer confuse urgency with importance. God has trained your perception so that you can see what matters before it manifests fully. There is also a new invitation now to walk with patience that is confident, not hesitant. Waiting before was heavy because you did not know when relief would come. Waiting now is lighter because you know direction has been established. Patience after the trial is not passive. It is poised. It is readiness without anxiety. It is strength under control. God is teaching you to hold momentum without forcing outcomes. You will find that your relationship with time has changed. You are less frantic, less pressured by comparison, less threatened by delay. This is freedom. God has removed the urgency that was rooted in fear and replaced it with urgency rooted in purpose. Purpose does not rush, but it does not stall. Purpose moves steadily, intentionally anchored in trust. This is also the season where God asks you to trust your obedience history. You are no longer guessing whether you can remain faithful. You have evidence. You have memory. You have testimony within yourself. When doubt tries to question your capacity, remind yourself that you endured what you once thought would undo you. Confidence now is not arrogance. It is remembrance. Be aware that not everyone will recognize the weight of what God has placed on you. Some will underestimate you because they remember who you were in survival mode. Others will overestimate you because they see results but not the cost. Neither perception should govern you. God alone defines you. Stay anchored in that truth. Identity grounded in God remains stable regardless of opinion. There will be moments when silence returns, but it will feel different now. Not empty, not threatening, but spacious. Silence becomes a place of recalibration instead of confusion. God often speaks through what he withholds as much as through what he reveals. Learn to listen without panic. Trust grows deeper in quiet places. The final trial also refined your relationship with power. You learned that control is fragile, but surrender is strong. You learned that manipulation exhausts, but trust sustains. Now, when influence comes, you will not cling to it. You will hold it loosely, steward it wisely, and release it when God directs. This posture keeps you free. Guard against nostalgia that glorifies hardship. Hardship taught you, but it is not your standard. God moves you forward for a reason. Comfort is not the enemy. Complacency is. Peace is not the enemy. Passivity is. God gives rest so that you can move with clarity, not so that you can stop responding. You may notice a new burden forming in your heart. Not heavy, but persistent. The concern for things larger than yourself, and awareness of needs beyond your immediate world. This is expansion. God is widening your compassion to match your calling. Pay attention to what troubles you now. Often assignment is hidden in discomfort that does not go away. Do not confuse simplicity with insignificance. Some of your most impactful actions will be quiet, unseen, ordinary. God often works through consistency more than spectacle. What you do repeatedly shapes the world around you more than what you do occasionally. Faithfulness compounds. There is also a sharpening of conscience in this season. You feel conviction more quickly, correction more clearly. This is not condemnation. It is closeness. God corrects those he trusts. Respond quickly. Delayed obedience dulls sensitivity. Immediate alignment preserves clarity. You are now learning how to carry joy without guilt. In past seasons, joy may have felt irresponsible while others suffered or while uncertainty lingered. But joy is not denial, it is strength. God allows joy to restore what sorrow depleted. Receive it fully. Joy renews vision. As you advance, keep learning. Humility is maintained by curiosity. Ask questions. Seek understanding. Growth does not end when trials end. Wisdom continues to unfold for those who remain teachable. God resists stagnation but honors pursuit. There will be moments when you are tempted to measure progress by visible results alone. Resist that. Some of the most important work God does through you will not be immediately quantifiable. Seeds are planted before harvest appears. Trust the process you already know so well. The authority you carry now is quiet but undeniable. It does not need to announce itself. It does not need to dominate. It influences by presence. This kind of authority is rare, and it is born only through endurance, surrender, and faithfulness under pressure. Stay attentive to your inner posture. Success tests humility as much as hardship tests faith. Keep returning to gratitude. Keep returning to stillness. Keep returning to alignment. These practices are anchors. And as the path continues to open, as decisions carry greater weight, as influence expands and responsibility deepens, the same God who watched you endure, who declared the trial complete, continues to walk with you step by step, shaping not only what you do, but who you are becoming, inviting you into deeper trust, clearer obedience, and a life that unfolds steadily under divine guidance, moving forward without fear, without striving, without needing an ending. Because the journey remains alive, responsive, and in motion as you continue onward into what God is still revealing, still forming, still bringing to life as you walk into it now with awareness, humility, and unwavering trust in God, who remains present as the unfolding continues. Now stand still for a moment, not in hesitation, but in reverence, and examine your life honestly before. God, look at where you began. Look at what you endured. Look at who you have become. And recognize that nothing about this journey has been accidental. Every closed door refined you. Every delay strengthened you. Every tear clarified you. God was present in every unseen moment, shaping you with intention, guarding you with purpose, and guiding you with wisdom, even when you could not feel it. Let this awareness awaken gratitude, not complacency, and humility, not fear. This is your call now. Live deliberately. Do not drift through the days that follow as if they are ordinary. They are entrusted. Align your thoughts, your words, your choices with the awareness that God has brought you through the fire. Not to return you to survival, but to release you into purpose. Examine what no longer belongs in your life. Release habits that dull your sensitivity. Remove distractions that weaken your focus. Restore disciplines that strengthen your spirit. Draw nearer to God, not out of desperation, but out of devotion. Let your life become a response to what God has done. Walk with integrity even when compromise looks easier. Choose truth even when silence feels safer. Remain faithful when obedience costs comfort. Do not shrink back from responsibility. Do not hide the wisdom forged in you through endurance. Let your presence bring order. Let your words bring clarity. Let your actions reflect the steadiness of a life anchored in God. Renew your purpose daily. Purpose is not sustained by emotion, but by commitment. Wake each day aware that your steps matter, your choices echo, and your obedience carries weight beyond what you can see. When doubt whispers, remember what you survive. When fear resurfaces, remember who sustained you. When pride tempts you, remember who refined you. Keep your heart open, your spirit attentive, and your trust anchored in God alone. And now rise not in haste, not in arrogance, but in quiet confidence, knowing that the trial is complete. The refining has done its work, and the calling before you requires a life fully surrendered, fully awake, fully aligned. Walk forward with courage shaped by experience, humility preserved by gratitude, and faith grounded in the unchanging nature of God. Let your life testify without words. Let your obedience speak louder than fear. Let your journey reflect the truth that when God brings you through, He does so with purpose, with intention, and with a future that demands a heart wholly devoted, wholly responsive, and wholly alive in the presence of God.